She says, Dietrich, something's coming. Something unstoppable. To which Dietrich assures her, nothing's unstoppable. And he believed that. That was another thread that I felt like they put in there, because when the plot to kill Hitler is introduced, he instantly says, send me Hans. That's where Hans was.
Yeah.
Send me Hans.
But before we get into our conversation, my name's Eric Metaxas, and this channel exists to bring you a biblical perspective on today's news, culture, and hot-button issues. If you're new here or not, welcome, and be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you are notified when new videos get posted. You're my guest right now because you just wrote a review of the Bonhoeffer film.
Yeah.
You saw the Bonhoeffer film. Now, this is a sneak peek, obviously. It's not coming out till November 22nd. But we're trying to get people to buy tickets early because, ladies and gentlemen, it matters hugely to the success of the film. If people buy tickets early, if the theaters are filled on the opening weekend, November 22nd, it is a great film. I have seen it. But you have written about it. So what is your sense? Because I'm so close to it because I've seen it, over time. I've seen different versions of it. Now it's done. You saw the final version. So people can read your review at winepatch.org. Winepatch.org. But, okay, what'd you think?
Well, yeah, we got to see it together at the Tribeca screening.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary film. It's beautiful. From a film production standpoint, it's visually stunning.
Yeah.
And it's very muted. The lighting is a David Fincher kind of vibe.
Oh, they have a big deal. I can't think of his name now, but they have a big deal. A DP, director of photography. They really got. He's a major name in the industry. I can't think of it now. I think he was the DP on Gladiator. No joke. So it's a big deal. So the film looks like a great film. And you don't realize until, if you watch a Hallmark film, you realize, oh, this was not done by Ingmar Bergman or Martin Scorsese. This has a certain look and the color and like it doesn't look like a film. This looks like a film because it's made by people who are in that world. Yeah, because you think about they're placing you in that dark chapter of German history, of world history. Yeah. And as soon as the film starts, you're in it. Yeah. You feel that. Yeah. And it opens with young Bonhoeffer, and then the guy that played Bonhoeffer, I believe his name is Jonas Dassler. Jonas Dassler. He's a German actor. He's a big deal in Germany. All the actors in the film
are German.
Are major German actors. So when the film opens in Germany sometime in the spring, it's going to be a big deal. These are major actors in Germany. Yeah. So I keep joking around. I say, so they have authentic German accents. In other words, they're speaking English. Obviously, the film's in English. But these are authentic German accents because all the actors are really German. And Jonas Dassler, he's a young man. I don't know if he's 26 or 27, but he is a very big deal in the theater in Germany. He's been a theater actor, and it was kind of a big deal that he got to do this film. It was a big deal for the people making the film to get him. Yeah. He had decided, I think he decided that he didn't want to do any projects for a year, take a year off or something, and they managed to lure him to do it because it was such a great script. And that's Jonas Dassler who plays Bonhoeffer,
and he plays the role beautifully. And I think I said to you right after the film, he's got this combination of a boyish smirk, this little smile. Yeah. He's got that jawline, and yet he had these deep, dark, sunken eyes. And so he was able to transmit the joy that Bonhoeffer had in his faith in Jesus, in his purpose and his calling for what Christ had given him to do. And at the same time, you could see the pain and the suffering and the weight of the trial that he was carrying. He does a beautiful job. Beautiful job.
You're a very astute observer of film, Keith Guinta. It's
I'm
not like
Siskel.
It's not like they say like you're stupid.
I'm smart.
Like you're stupid. No, honestly, those are some really keen observations because I've seen the film a couple times, and now but I hadn't thought of that. That's very true.
Because when I go to the film, when I go to the movies, I want to be lost, right? I want to get caught up into the film, and I'm not thinking about anything else. And that's what this film did.
Yeah.
And I say it if a film doesn't. This one, you're instantly in. And I'd actually even love to hear, maybe not now, because you are an expert and you wrote the book, what?
Well, the film is not, I mean, I've said this many times, the film is not based on my book. It's just a Bonhoeffer film. The producers say that they were inspired when they read my book back in 2010 to make a Bonhoeffer film. But that's what's amazing to me about when you watch a film and a book, they couldn't be more different. You can't do in a film what you do in a book. And so, they leave stuff out, they kind of, but it was... It was amazing, you were there with Jill, your wife, and you're seeing this for the first time, and you and the others who were seeing it for the first time raved, and I thought because I'm so close to it, I can no longer appreciate it the way I did when I first saw it.
Yeah, and the timeliness of it. Could there be I only wish it was coming out before the election, because it's that important, and I think there's going to be. I think we're going to see mischaracterizations, that they're going to see Bonhoeffer as fighting the Trump archetype, right? That Hitler is Trump, and he's fighting this Christian nationalism.
For people who believe Hitler is Trump, there's nothing you can do with those people.
Couldn't be further from the truth.
It's by the grace of God, Trump will be elected, and then they will over time see he's not acting like Hitler. How weird, because we were so sure that he was a dictator. What a bizarre thing that he's not acting like Hitler. Why isn't he? No, it's kind of funny. I think that's one of the things I love about the film is that it's not political. It's just a film about Bonhoeffer that, you can read into it what you want. I obviously hope that it drives people to read my book because there's so much depth to Bonhoeffer, and in my book I quote him constantly, and that's why people who criticized my book, I thought, well, you're criticizing Bonhoeffer because I'm just quoting Bonhoeffer.
Right.
Read what he wrote. I quote his letters.
Right.
I quote his diary. I quote a lot of his letters and a lot of his diary, his journals, because I want people to see the person in my book. I think people who read Bonhoeffer and they see him as this highbrow academic, he was, but you can't really get Bonhoeffer the person from those writings. But when you read his letters to his family, to his friends, where he's joking, you see a whole different side. And that to me is what the film captures, is this multifaceted person, this genius, but who also has a real soul and a heart.
And they dropped in a lot of his famous quotes into really poignant scenes.
Yeah.
So it made those quotes take on kind of flesh and story.
Yeah.
And I love that. One of the most moving chapters, both in the book, in his life, but also in the film, was his time in Harlem.
Oh.
So he goes there as this brilliant, chosen theologian, and he goes into that black church, the Abyssinian Baptist church, and that's where he encounters the Lord, and that's where he encounters the Holy Spirit. So he's at the dry, dusty Union Seminary. It's not even challenging him, but he has an encounter with the Lord that changes everything in Harlem, right?
Well, that's the hinge of his life. That's when it's not that his theology really changes much. He changes. In other words, he was he never was wrong well, I shouldn't say he never was wrong. He basically, but he is who he is. But something happens to him in Harlem that he realizes we need to put our faith in action. We need to live out our faith.
Yeah.
And that's where the political comes in. He's like, when he sees Hitler rising, he's like, yes, the church needs to be political. The church needs to stand against evil, because the political and the evil of the Nazi politics is going to crush the church. It's going to destroy Germany. It's going to murder, as we now know, millions of Jews. And he understands that it's the role of the church to stand against that. And that was something that came to him in Harlem. He sees the black church. He sees that they are living out their faith, and also that their faith has this experiential side. They're not just worshiping this distant God, but they love God. They praise him in their singing. There's joy, and he did not see that in the white Protestant churches in New York, and he definitely didn't see it in the Lutheran churches in Germany. So it changes everything for him. But we're going to go to a break. Folks, if you want to get early tickets that are discounted, listen to me. Go to angel.com/Eric, angel.com/Eric. These are discounted tickets. Please do this. Angel.com/Eric. Are you worried about retirement, wondering if you've saved enough, or fearing you might not be able to retire at all? My friends at Noble Gold Investments have helped thousands turn uncertainty into security. Imagine replacing sleepless nights with the confidence that your retirement is safe and protected. No more fear of market crashes, inflation, or outliving your savings. Contact Noble Gold Investments to discover how the power of gold can help build the future you deserve. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Secure your retirement with just one click. All right, so further impressions of the film.
I mentioned that it opens with young Bonhoeffer and his brother Hans. No, not Hans.
Well, the young
who was
Bonhoeffer,
killed in
Walter.
in World War I.
Walter,
thank you.
So Bonhoeffer. The film opens with the 9-year-old or 8-year-old Bonhoeffer being chased by his brother Walter.
Walter, I missed
who
the name.
is killed in World War I.
That's right.
And that is a turning point in his life. And I remember when I wrote about it in my book, it's very hard because this was, to lose a beloved brother, it really changed Bonhoeffer. I think it really kind of sobered him up. Like when you're, even at age 12, suddenly you become a man because you're facing death.
And you see the relationship that they had in that he was Dietrich's hero, and how tenderly Walter loved his little brother, and they were playing and hiding and running. And one of the first scenes is at the funeral, if you remember. And I used this scene to kind of frame my whole review because I thought it was so powerful. He's sitting at the piano at the family reception after the funeral, playing Walter's favorite song.
Okay, now people don't know this. If you read my book, you might even not remember. Bonhoeffer, no kidding, was a virtuoso musician. Virtuoso to the point where he even explored becoming a musician, not a theologian. And right, he was at some point thinking he was so good, so much of a virtuoso on the piano that he explored that. But then he decides, no, I want to be a theologian. I want to be a pastor. But so here you have him at the piano as a kid, whatever he is. I'm trying to remember if it was 1918. So he would have been, he's 12 years old. And he's playing Walter's favorite song. So that's at the funeral of Walter, who just died in World War I.
So he's playing the song on the piano, and he gets the sense nobody's listening, and he darts from the piano, runs to his room in tears, crying. And his mother comes to console him, the mother that's just lost her son. Dietrich, what bothers you? What's the matter? And he said, no one was listening. No one cared. And I thought that was it. His whole life was trying to get people to hear the notes of heaven, the truth, the things that he knew to be true about the Nazis, about the church, what the church wasn't doing. And he always felt not enough were listening and nobody cared. And his mother said, no, Dietrich, they were listening. They were just caught up in their own thoughts. And I thought, what a picture that is. And I'm sure the filmmakers put that there
Well, I'll
specifically.
say it again that, Todd Komarnicki, who wrote the screenplay, he's a genius. He's been in the film world for for decades. He directed the film. He wrote the screenplay for Sully, the Clint Eastwood film. He's a major filmmaker. That's why it's such a big deal that the producers were able to get him to make the film.
He worked on Elf.
And he was a producer on Elf. That's right. So, he's a major filmmaker. So there are these levels of things going on, and you just pulled one of them out. That here you have, Bonhoeffer. It's the 12-year-old Bonhoeffer, or 11, or whatever he is, and he's the same Bonhoeffer that you're going to see later on, but you see it different. You see it from a different angle.
And just that sense that no one's listening, nobody's heeding his warnings. And I tie that to the scene, if you remember, when he gives that great sermon, and he's thundering truth from the pulpit, and fellow clergymen are getting up and walking out. Congregants are getting up and walking out. And you could, again, feel that same, they're not listening. They don't care. They don't hear what I'm saying. And if you remember, he's greeting people at the door as they're leaving the church. And this one person leans in really close and went, "Thank you. It's been a long time since I've heard the truth." But they said it in a way that they were afraid of who might hear around them. And again, it's that picture that the church is either afraid, we're in fear, we're not listening, we don't care. But there are those few who are so grateful when they hear a pastor preach the truth from the pulpit. And that scene was very telling for me, because you would think you would be boldly thanking him, but they lean in and whisper it because they're afraid. Because the Nazis at this point was instilling fear and control. And we see many of the clergy who fall under that spell.
And we see it today. I've talked to Naomi Wolf many times, and she says people come up to me at certain events and they kind of whisper to me like, "I'm on your side, but I just don't want to. I don't want people to know." Well, thank you very much for being a coward, so I can get sued and have people attack me. You know, but it's look. It's always been like this in these times in history. We're living through a time in history like this right now, which is why it's so amazing that the Bonhoeffer film would come out now. Because it's speaking to us where we live, and these observations are extraordinary. I want to keep you around for another segment if we have the time. But folks, if you want to get discounted tickets, go to angel.com/Eric. I don't know why you wouldn't want to get a discounted ticket. Angel.com/Eric, angel.com/Eric. And to read the review, go to winepatch.org. So yeah, what else did you observe about the film?
Yeah, I also want to say it's going to be at Intercessors for America, so watch for it there, and at the stream. It's going to be there as well. The review.
The review.
Yeah.
It's going to be at stream.org.
It will
but not
be.
yet.
It's
Okay.
not yet, but I wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Another scene that I loved was when he was with his twin sister, Sabine. You remember they're lying in bed.
Sabina, yeah.
Sharing.
The German pronunciation is Sabina. So yeah, he had a twin sister.
Yeah.
And that's another part of the story. It's kind of amazing. I mean, they don't get into this in the film, but in my book I tell the story of she marries a man who's ethnically Jewish. Now he accepts Jesus, he's a Christian, but he's ethnically Jewish. So imagine Bonhoeffer's twin sister that he was in the womb with marries a Jewish man, and they and their children, this is his sister, his brother-in-law, and their kids whom he loves, are attacked, as Jews. So he has a personal stake in what the Nazis are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. But in that endearing scene, they're sharing a cigarette, passing it back and forth, remembering when they were children, and they had that eternity. And then it shifts, and she says, Dietrich, something's coming, something unstoppable. To which Dietrich assures her, nothing's unstoppable. And he believed that. That was another thread that I felt like they put in there, because when the plot to kill Hitler is introduced, he instantly says, "Send me Hans." That's where Hans was.
Yeah.
Send me Hans.
That's his other brother-in-law, Hans Donaghy, who was one of the key figures in the Abwehr, German military intelligence. But, okay, so to be clear, so this is now the adult Bonhoeffer. He's come back from New York, and he and his twin sister, they see the Nazis are on the rise. And it is interesting to me that they can feel what's coming. And part of what makes Bonhoeffer such an interesting figure is that his family was so well connected. They could see behind the scenes. They knew the top players, and they would hear stuff that your average German would never hear. it would be like having a family where, so-and-so works at CBS and the other one works at the White House, and like you're hearing stuff that most people aren't hearing. And,
Right.
Back when CBS was actually a thing. But I'm just saying, like, Bonhoeffer hears this stuff. And so you're right, though, in that scene when she says, I think there's something we can't stop. And when he says that, when I give all my speeches and lectures and sermons on Bonhoeffer, I say that you've got to understand, Bonhoeffer knew that if the German church had stood, they could have stopped it. That's the tragedy of it, is that he knew they could have stopped the Nazis if the church had stood. The church refused to stand. They were merely religious. They said, no, we just want to have our nice church services. We don't want to get involved in politics.
Right.
Well, then evil takes over and millions are murdered. Thank you, church.
I just recently read the Book of Jude again. Long time since I considered the Book of Jude. And it is a strong warning against evil men who infiltrate, who come in, and from the inside out bring corruption, and that they must be stopped. And I thought about that when I was thinking about that scene, and just the fact that Dietrich knew, he had such resolve. He knew that it could be stopped, like you said. And he knew that this was an evil that he could stop. I think there was another quote when somebody was almost mockingly saying, well, is this the first evil ruler since the beginning of Scripture? And he said, no, it's the first one I can stop. He wasn't able to stop the Old Testament figures or Caesar or Herod.
Yeah.
But this was the first one that was on the planet at the same time, and he knew nothing is unstoppable. What resolve?
Yeah.
What resolve?
Yeah. No, look, there's a reason Bonhoeffer is such a towering figure. When you get to know him, his intellect is amazing, but his faith it's a solid faith. And so people often have asked me, like, where do you think he got his courage from? And I think, like, if you know God and you know that what God says is true, you instantly have courage. Other people look at it and say, you have courage, but it comes out of your faith. He knew God is God. He knew God has called him to speak out, and it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. What else from the film? The scene at the gallows, the way the film ends. Oh my gosh! I mean, I don't think there was a dry cheek in the screening room at that last scene. They have him. I don't remember from your book if he led communion on the day.
Well, actually,
because in the movie they had him.
It's the day before.
It's the day before.
It's the day before. This is all true. This is what's so amazing. In my book, at the end of the book, I talk about how they're being driven around in this. It's a whole story, but they end up in the schoolhouse, and they're prisoners, but they didn't know where to go, and the bus is taking them around. So they stop in a schoolhouse one night. He performs communion. Like, this is not made up. Yeah. This actually happened. They're witnesses. They wrote about it. That's why I put it in my book. Right. This is true. So he does a communion service, and it's like a Sunday, and he preaches to this little group of prisoners. It's unbelievable. This actually happened.
And one guard.
And they put it in the film, and one guard, and there was a guy, they don't mention it in the film, but in my book, Kokorin, who was kind of an atheist, and he attends this. It's so beautiful. And that's when, like, at the end of that, they say, Bonhoeffer, prisoner Bonhoeffer, come with me. And so that's when they drive him to Flossenburg, and when he's executed. This is amazing history. It's beautiful. And so I'm so thrilled, Keith, that you saw the film, that you reviewed the film. I hope people will read your review. It'll be at the stream, but right now it's at winepatch.org. I'll share it on my social media just because it's like the first review of the film, and I'm excited. Winepatch.org. And I want to remind people before we go, you can get discounted tickets to the film. It's got to open big on November 22nd, folks. Please take this seriously. It's a great film. Angel.com/Eric for discounted tickets. Go to angel.com/Eric. Keith Guinta, thank you.
Thank you.